Massive destruction across Los Angeles. Some neighborhoods are simply gone. Now the city faces another threat today. 70-mile-an-hour winds with the power to fan the flames. Plus, New York's new congestion pricing is turning the city that never sleeps into a ghost town and picking the pocket of New Jersey drivers. Now the mayor of Jersey City says he has a plan to fight back. Plus, TikTok on the verge of being shut down or sold. How it could end up in the hands of one of the world's most influential billionaires. Welcome to Next. I'm Ken Rosato. Firefighters are in a critical phase of battling Los Angeles' deadly wildfires, but warnings of 70-mile-an-hour winds could worsen the situation. At least 24 have died, with more expected, says Governor Gavin Newsom. Over 92,000 have evacuated, with the Eaton and Palisades fires among California's most destructive, scorching an area larger than the city of Paris. California Governor Gavin Newsom has proposed an additional $2.5 billion to aid Los Angeles recovery, likening this initiative to the Marshall Plan, which was the template to rebuild after World War II. The funds will support cleanup, school reopenings, and enhance wildfire preparedness. Newsom promised swift, strong rebuilding efforts, assuring Los Angeles residents, quote, "We have your back." With a new Congress and a new administration, California will lobby for federal dollars to help rebuild. House Speaker Mike Johnson was asked about sending federal aid to California without any conditions.
Obviously, there's been water resources management, forest management mistakes, all sorts of problems. And it does come down to leadership, and it appears to us that state and local leaders were derelict in their duty in many respects. So that's something that has to be factored in. I think there should probably be conditions on that aid. That's my personal view. We'll see what the consensus is. I haven't had a chance to socialize that with any of the members over the weekend because we've all been very busy, but it'll be part of the discussion for sure.
Now, some of the conditions that the Speaker of the House was referring to involve a lot of the environmental laws that California has. In fact, that California has some of the most strict environmental laws in the entire country. Back prior to the mid-1970s, normally one would clear the brush underneath many of the fires and many of the trees in the canyons where a lot of those fires occurred. By clearing out the brush, you don't provide fuel for a fire, so that if there is a spark that comes from either somebody lighting a fire in the woods at night or lightning from a storm, if there is no dry kindling, you can't have the kind of wildfires that you have in California right now. To preserve wildlife or for the sake of nature, many environmentalists have come full force against California's legislature, demanding that that underbrush not be cleared. And now in recent years, you've had massive fire after massive fire. So Congress is saying, look, we'll give you billions to rebuild, but you can't keep rebuilding every year until you change the way you do things. So that is certainly what is going to be coming up in the discussion. I know that President Trump has also said, or incoming President Trump, that California needs to reconsider the way they do things in order to move forward. In the wake of the devastating wildfires, we're speaking with those directly impacted. Joining us now is musician Jerry Rothschild, whose home was lost in those wildfires. We are so sorry to hear what you're going through and for your loss. When did you first find out? How did the whole process begin?
Well, for us, it was a little strange because we were actually out of town. We were on our way home from the airport. And hit a traffic jam, and we knew winds were coming. We didn't know about the fires. So when we got home, there was a little fire on the hill, which wasn't all that unusual. But the winds just kicked up, and the smoke got worse. We ended up, nobody went to bed. We ended up evacuating around 3:30 that morning. We got an evacuation message on our phones.
So you got home, you were home only a few hours, and then you got to evacuate. So you literally had a few hours in your house and no thought process about what you might want to save. What did you lose? Everything?
Well, I was very lucky because my wife belongs to two organizations, and they both have to do with evacuation because we live in earthquake country. So we actually had a go bag that we knew where it was, and it had papers and some zip drives and things like that. So we had, and of course we were coming back from vacation, so we had packed suitcases. So we just threw everything in the car, and then we started thinking about what could we save, and that was a different situation.
That must be gut-wrenching. What were the most challenging aspects then of dealing with this loss, both personally and of course professionally, because you have your music career?
Yeah, I lost musically, being a guitarist and being in the business for so long. I had a pretty good guitar collection. I lost 14 out of my 19 guitars, and some of those things pretty rare. And my full studio is gone. And then, of course, everything else is gone. There is literally my chimney standing.
Where are you staying these days?
We're now at a hotel, dealing with the insurance company, who has been very, very responsive. They're good. And we're slowly just working through, um, just finding what we could do. We didn't manage to grab some drives for the computer. I just bought a new computer yesterday. Funny story was, I had a gig on Friday. I had a guitar and nothing else. So I went to Guitar Center and spent 2 days buying everything else you need to go do a gig, and played two of them over the weekend. And that was probably the best two parts of any day since this happened.
So I'm trying to absorb all that. I can't even imagine.
Tell me about it.
Right, at the end of the day, the one thing everybody wants to do is just go to their home and be in their bed and be with their
Yeah.
family, and to know that you can never do that again. You have to recreate what your home is, your bed, etc. How long are they talking about potentially taking to rebuild? Or are you going to rebuild there or go somewhere else?
Well, at this point, the intention is to rebuild, and you got to figure, we're figuring at least 3 years to, I mean, they have to get all the toxic stuff out of there. They have to make it, viable to live again. I don't know what you know about what's going on up there. It's not just houses. I mean, the whole town, a lot of the town of Altadena just doesn't exist anymore. If you look at video and pictures, these houses vaporized.
Unbelievable. Jerry, how's the community response been? Are you getting a lot of support? Have you received or seen others in similar situations? And how are they dealing? Because, I mean, at least no matter where you are in the socioeconomic ladder, you have some means. You were able to buy more guitars. There are a lot of people who may not have that ability, who maybe didn't have their bank card, and so they're really struggling.
Yeah, from what I know, well, first of all, there's a lot of just pop community chats groups that popped up during this. Altadena is a pretty tight community, so people are talking about. There's a whole lot of communication as to where you can go to get food, to get some clothing, to get shelter. How long that lasts, I don't know. But right now, and the county supervisor has been very involved. At this point, I'm not. You can't get anywhere near my house at this point. So National are there keeping people out because they just need to do the work to get the fire in control and to make sure that it's safe to be there. So we're a little in the dark, actually, as to what's going on right at the area.
With everything that's happened and everything being so up in the air at this point, how infuriating is it to hear that there have been roving bands of individuals who've tried to loot? And we've been given the assurance by the government that they would be kept out and they would be prosecuted, yet you still keep hearing stories of dozens, if not hundreds, of looters throughout the region.
Right. Well, I can tell you that the narrative is there. I can tell you the sheriff's department is there because I have tried to go back to my home and I have not been able to. It is a foothill area. There is no possible way that every looter can be kept out. I have to give these guys credit because they're there and they're doing what they can. But it's a foothill area. I mean, there's always a way in for that one or two person. I think it would be a lot worse without the protection.
And I think a lot of people forget that those police officers and firefighters and paramedics, they have their own homes that they've lost too, and they're trying to deal with their own
Oh,
families at the end of the
oh,
day, and they're all working
yes,
triple shifts, so they must be
right.
absolutely burned out.
From
Finally,
what
Jerry,
I
from me, go
understand,
ahead.
it's 16 hours on, 8 hours off.
And the constant stress of knowing that you don't have a place to go home to either, and you're trying to help everybody else. Finally, Jerry,
Absolutely.
what message do you have for others who might be facing similar challenges because of the wildfires?
You know what else? Do what you can. You can wallow in it, or you can just try to move forward. Bad jokes help a lot. We do that a lot. There's moments of tears and a lot of bad jokes to keep going. Humor, use humor. It helps a lot.
Well, thankfully, you and your family are safe. That's the most important thing. It really does come down to, and it sounds so cliched, and it's easier for somebody on the opposite side of the country to say, at least you have your health and your safety. But really, at the end of the day, at least you have your health and your safety. Everything else hopefully will come
Yeah,
fast.
right. I mean and you realize how important that is, and then the rest is one step forward,
You-
and
Well,
wait
we
it out.
appreciate you, especially at this time with all you've been through. Musician Jerry Rothschild, a man who has lost his home in California, along with so many hundreds or thousands, I should say, of others. We hope that the country comes together to help you all rebuild as soon as possible, and may this never happen again. We thank you so much for being with us, and all the best to you and your family.
Appreciate it. Y'all have a good one.
You as well. Well, the people in Southern California certainly have suffered a lot. The concern now is the strong winds, and some people are saying that those winds could top 70 miles an hour today. Meteorologist Mike Favetta is here. Mike, what do you think the latest is today, and how strong can these winds end up?
Well, Ken, the gusts have been clocked at over 90 miles per hour earlier in the week, and now going forward, they're still very strong, but they're starting to switch direction, and that is a concern because now it'll blow the smoke further south to the more populated areas down toward Orange County. We'll show you the map here with the Santa Ana winds. You've seen them, and you know where they come from the desert over the Rockies, the Sierra Nevada, and right down into the LA basin. It's those hot, dry winds that provide the fuel to the fire, helping the fires grow as it remains dry and gusty. It's all about that wind flow that comes from the opposite direction, which the wind normally blows from the desert down to places like Malibu and along the coast, where those wildfires keep spreading over toward the ocean. So it's the combination of the strong winds, the dry air, that very high temperature and high wind that allows for that risk of fire and the embers to carry along with it. Over the next several days, at least today, you see there's that critical fire weather risk, the extreme fire weather right there, just north of LA, where those fires are still burning. But because the Santa Ana winds are blowing more from the north this week, you'll see a little bit more of an elevated and critical risk down to places in Orange County and even potentially as far south as San Diego. So that's the next concern as that extreme fire weather warning comes across most of the LA basin from Santa Monica back through downtown and even over through Long Beach, with the general area of fire weather. Look at that, extending right down toward the Mexican border. So it's a much larger area going forward thanks to those northerly breezes pushing on down and those winds rather high. The latest smoke and fire showing those big fires that we've been telling you about, the one north of Santa Monica there toward Malibu, back over toward Arcadia, in Palmdale and Glendale, and then one closer to Victorville. But all of those winds are pushing the smoke out to sea right now. The concern is that with a northerly wind, more of those smoky particles will work their way south, and that's a concern for air quality too. The percent of normal rain, 0. No rainfall. In fact, they've been in such a deficit in the LA basin, in much of the greater, southwestern California area, that we've seen anywhere from, less than 2-inch rainfall deficits in many places, from Malibu to Beverly Hills, down towards Santa Monica, and even over in Pasadena and East LA. So all these areas kind of teetering on the high end of the scale here for just a 1-month rainfall deficit of almost 2 inches. And it's even worse in places west and south, where those fires may be expected to spread to. Air quality alerts up and down the LA area, including down toward places in Orange County. And even with the air quality worsening as those winds blow south, that'll be the next concern, Ken, for people that don't have active wildfires in their backyard. They might be breathing those smoke particles in places that kind of were unscathed so far this year, places as far south as Anaheim. It's going to be quite interesting to see now that places that had not been affected directly by these wildfires may have more of an issue with that northerly wind blowing over the next few days, Ken.
And you know what's amazing about all this, Mike, is just 10 months ago in the month of March, Southern California had flooding rains, about a foot of rain. And during that time, they did very little to preserve a lot of that rain from just washing off into the Pacific Ocean. That's part of the problem.
It's hard because, maintaining, and corralling, if you will, a lot of that runoff and a lot of that water tends to be an issue. It takes a lot of infrastructure to do that. But the other big concern, like you had mentioned, is a lot of the long range statistics of how dry the air and how dry the soil is in California. It's just average dry over the long term. They've had this very short period of that extremely dry weather, where if you go back, like you said, 1 year ago, back in March, they actually had that surplus of rainfall. So that allowed for a little bit of kind of a skew, if you will, to the statistics, that it's not all that dry in the long term, but that short term, the last month or so, tinderbox out west.
Unbelievable. All right, meteorologist Mike Favetta, we know you'll stay on top of it. Thanks so much. And the cost to drive into New York City has skyrocketed with new congestion pricing in place. Coming up next, New Jersey mayor's plan to fight back. Early signs show congestion pricing seems to be working in Manhattan, with reduced traffic and some streets looking like a ghost town. Pedestrians report less congestion near the business district. The MTA says there's a significant uptick in public transit use, with subway ridership up 7.8% and bus usage up 4% from last year at the same time. But a lot of the cost is falling on New Jersey drivers heading into the city. In a bold response, Jersey City Mayor Stephen Fulop, who's also running for governor of New Jersey, has proposed a reverse congestion pricing toll, and that would be for drivers entering New Jersey from New York. Mayor Fulop joins us now. Good to have you with us today, Mayor.
Good to be here.
Well, this is a significant challenge, of course, because you have so many New Jersey people who come in, and because of the times that a lot of New Jersey people come in, they have to drive. Mass transit is either not available or a potential safety hazard for them. So this seems to be a pretty significant response from New Jersey. How is it being taken by the people in New York?
It is. I would say the majority of people in New Jersey take mass transit into New York. And that's why I think Phil Murphy's been a little bit misguided in his approach here. And the congressional members that have protested against congestion pricing for the sake of polling are misguided. The reality is we have a shared transportation system between New York and New Jersey, and most regular people take mass transit. They don't take their personal vehicles, drive it to Midtown to work every day, and then pay $1,000 to park their personal vehicle there. They just don't do that. It's the wealthiest 2% that do this. So I'm fighting for the regular person that takes mass transit that basically needs investment there.
New York wanted to raise hundreds of millions of dollars and at the same time reduce traffic. So they've reduced traffic, but you can't reduce traffic and still raise hundreds of millions of dollars. So you're going to hear the MTA in a year cry the blues, because they're not going to have raised that money. Where's the money going to come from now that everybody's staying out?
I mean, look, I think there's a reality that we have a shared economy, that, when New York is always competing for businesses with New Jersey, or one congestion tax versus the other, we're intertwined. And I think that you need to think about the fact that you have a shared congestion tax between the states, so that way New Jersey infrastructure benefits as much as New York. That's the only way that's going to work long term, because otherwise I do agree with you.
Yeah, it just feels like a big money grab, Mayor. Look, New York City has a city income tax, a state income tax. You have, of course, the federal income tax. You have city and county taxes that are through the roof, higher than anywhere else in the nation other than maybe California. Yet New York is still in a multi-billion-dollar deficit. It seems like it's just this bottomless pit where money just gets tossed down and they just can't figure it out. Why do they then put it on the shoulders of people from out of town?
Yeah, that's why people should move to New Jersey and live in New Jersey. That's first. And secondly, I agree with you on the mismanagement component in New York. But it doesn't change the fact that there is some merit to the argument of congestion pricing. What they do with the dollars is on them and responsible governments. But I really think having a reverse congestion tax on New Yorkers coming into New Jersey will bring New York back to the table to create kind of a shared revenue opportunity for New Jersey and New York together.
And one thing they're not thinking about is that New Jersey is part of the mainland United States. Manhattan is not. And for all the trucks coming in with all the goods that go to Manhattan from all over the United States, they have to funnel through one state, the Garden State.
That is true. That is a true statement.
So
Exactly.
it'll be very interesting to see when they get a little dose of their own medicine. And part of it, too, is that I think a lot of New Yorkers don't realize that that money has to be gotten from somewhere, that New Yorkers who buy goods in corner stores, et cetera, they're going to have to pay that price so that their gallon of milk is now going to go up by $1 because that money has to come from somewhere. Do you think congestion pricing, by the way, is going to hit New York City tourism and businesses in the long term?
I don't know about tourism. There's probably going to be an impact to restaurants and businesses if it's not really kind of contemplated how to make it work from a regional standpoint. And I think you touched on kind of a core challenge that the MTA is mismanaged and New Jersey Transit is mismanaged. So if you don't fix those two systems, that they're reliable, that they're clean, that people want to take them and feel comfortable and safe, then this whole thing is for nothing, because you can't have a transportation system that doesn't work and people don't feel comfortable with. If you're pushing them in that direction, it's got to be a reliable system.
One of the things, Mayor, that London did 7 years leading up to congestion pricing in London was they improved their infrastructure and they renovated the tube system so that all of their subways were brand new cars. They put police down on their subway system. Crime was way down so that people felt safe going back in the tube. It was something that was worth it to go down into the tube. And then they also changed their pricing structure, something that New York doesn't want to do, so that you have to pay based on the zones that you travel. And New York doesn't want that. They want that one flat $3 rate throughout the city, but it may not be practical to do that today.
I agree. What you just recommended or said that London did makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately, we're down the road here, so I don't know how you'd reverse that. I think you really do need to put proper investment into the subway system and New Jersey Transit. I think they're just today, people feel fundamentally unsafe. They don't feel clean. They don't feel reliable, desirable. So if you're pushing people with congestion taxes into the mass transit system that doesn't work, you're never going to get that outcome unless you invest properly.
Plus, New York City spent about 6 or 7 years allowing fare beaters to jump over turnstiles and walk onto buses, and they did nothing about it. They didn't prosecute people who did that. And then when they found themselves in a deficit, where do they turn? The people who have cars, because they know they can get drivers by going after their registrations if they don't pay. So it's just so robbing from Peter to pay Paul. It's really disgusting the way they're doing that. Drivers are not the problem. Drivers already paid for those roads with their taxes. It's the people who were not paying for the subways. And if the subway system can't work with the fare that they're charging, then that is mismanagement. They need to fix the subway system or charge a higher rate. But to charge drivers because you can't make the subways work right is just fundamentally unfair. Do you think that President Trump could do something to end congestion pricing himself, or does he need Congress?
I mean, look, it's TBD, to be determined what is rhetoric versus what he's going to take action on. I mean, he's very clear that he wants to reverse this. I don't know if it's something that's possible, but I suppose that if he pushed it with Congress, that he'd have support there. So I don't think Congress is going to be the obstacle, really, if he wants to get it done.
Well, one thing New York City better wake up to is the fact that 25 years ago, it was the epicenter of great food, entertainment, etc. Today, that's not the case. Many of the great restaurateurs have opened up restaurants in New Jersey, in Westchester, in Connecticut, on Long Island. You don't need to travel into Manhattan for a great dinner. And there are plenty of great regional theater shows, etc., that you could have, or people even just stay at home now and stream stuff. So they better wake up to the fact that they are no longer the draw they used to be. Plus, they're no longer 24 hours a day. So you could get everything that you want right in the Garden State. You don't need to spend all that extra money going into New Jersey.
You are a terrific salesman for New Jersey.
I live in New Jersey.
You should be running for governor.
You know what? I know somebody who is. Good luck to you, sir. It's a pleasure meeting you. You bet.
I appreciate that. Take
Steve
care.
Phillip, the mayor of Jersey City and a candidate for governor. Next, the clock is ticking on TikTok. How it could end up in the hands of Elon Musk. A pregnant Congresswoman is sparking a debate on Capitol Hill. Congresswoman Brittany Peterson, a Democrat from Colorado, is back in her home state and close to her due date. She's reached a point where doctors say she should not fly. While she can still perform the job, she can't physically be at Congress in Washington, D.C. right now. She's asking her colleagues to pass a bipartisan resolution that would allow new parents to vote remotely so they could still represent their district on critical votes. Question is, what do you think? Record a video and send it to me on X at Ken Rosato. Is this a good idea, or will this open the floodgates to remote voting by all members? Got to think about that, because the Constitution does say that each chamber has to have a quorum, in other words, a majority of members in order to have votes. But it does say that each chamber gets to make up its own rules. So it's up to the different members of each house. Chinese officials might sell TikTok's U.S. operations to Elon Musk if the app faces a ban, according to Bloomberg. TikTok's parent, ByteDance, prefers to keep control, but if forced, Musk's X could take over. The Supreme Court is leaning toward enforcing a sale or ban by January 19th. Let's bring in tech expert Fisher. Fisher, what do you think? Will Elon take over TikTok?
Well, it depends on who you ask, right? Initially, we had the former Secretary of Treasury, Steve Mnuchin. More vocally, we had Kevin O'Leary, so he might have something to say of Shark Tank fame. And then the Chinese government, per Bloomberg, is negotiating with Elon Musk. Now, mind you, TikTok and ByteDance, the parent company, have denied all of this. And in fact, ByteDance has gone as far as saying, we'll just shut the whole thing down instead of selling it. So the truth is out there somewhere. It's just who is speaking it.
Well, now the question is, for those wondering, what's the big deal? Why should I worry if I have a TikTok account?
Yeah, I think it's, well, the United States government is claiming national security, right? And the way you can look at it is tracking, right? So, and it could be two parts. One is, how does a mass respond to events? The drone situation a couple of weeks ago is a perfect example. Does a group of people, move away? Do they go into different areas? How do they respond to disasters? How do they respond to things like the drones? And then as an individual, it's also risky because you could be tracked. All the apps on our phones, one way or another, tracks us, whether basic data information, device ID, browser ID, your IP address, or, and in TikTok's case, what are you searching for? What are you watching? Could it be used at some point for bribery? Could it be used to embarrass you? Could, it be used to force you to say or do something? And that's really where the United States government is coming from.
Yeah, a lot of people are wondering if I simply delete the app, or I guess you'd have to uninstall it, not just delete, right? If I uninstall the app, is that sufficient, or is there something that's going to be planted on my phone?
No, and I guess that's the ultimate curiosity, not curiosity, but worry that ultimately it could be some sort of spyware. But typically, because we do have to, say that this is a legitimate application for your phone, that if you just uninstall it, you should be good to go and there would be no tracking.
Do you think that if this does move forward, is this something that might take weeks, months, years? Do you think this is something that's just a matter of announcing that Elon takes over and in a matter of days this happens? Do we have any kind of time frame? What's being floated out there?
Well, technologically speaking, it is not going to be on Sunday. Absolutely not. So what everyone is really hoping for, the 170 million Americans who are monthly active users, and as well as the hundreds of thousands of small businesses and creators that depend on it for income, is that President Biden would actually issue a stay if the Supreme Court agrees with the law for 90 plus days. One senator is floating 270 days. But yeah, there would have to be some time floated to disassociate. But again, the way that TikTok is built, that may be just a wish, because the algorithm is really the secret sauce to TikTok.
And the thing is, if the Chinese government had just pulled out entirely and allowed it to run as an American company independent of the ultimate control of communist China, none of this would be an issue. They keep saying that, they have nothing to do with it, but ultimately the Chinese government has the final say, and at any time the Chinese government could potentially take a look at everybody's records should they ever desire to, correct?
Yeah, and that's also the important part because you hear a lot of people speak, well, Facebook spies on us and Alphabet, the parent company of Google, et cetera, X, whatever. But they're American companies with servers in America and they're regulated by American laws. And with TikTok, while they may have servers in the United States, it's not guaranteed that there isn't a backdoor access for the Chinese government to get in and see the data that they have on Americans.
I just want to float out there, though, remember there are also sites like Temu and other websites out there that people, I've been guilty as charged, going on these sites. They offer cheap products and they constantly solicit on different social media sites. And those are Chinese government sites as well. The only difference here, right, with Temu, though, it's a store basically like an Amazon versus a social media site where, as you mentioned, you could track people's reactions to certain stories and the kinds of things they gravitate to in certain times, like, for instance, the wildfires in LA or the drones in New Jersey, as you mentioned. Fisher, tech expert, go ahead. I'm sorry. Please continue.
No, I was just going to say the difference, obviously, you're giving personal information like credit card information when you're going to Temu. But again, with TikTok, it is things that you search for and things that you watch that you may not talk about in regular everyday, may not talk about to your parents, to your loved ones, to your husband, to your wife. And that, that could possibly, and that's what's being accused, come back and bite you at some point.
Well, thank you so much. Tech expert Fisher, we appreciate you. Thanks for being on today. And Starbucks has long had an open door policy. Hang out, you could use the bathroom, write your movie script on their leather chairs. But now, if you want to lounge in their comfy chairs or use their restroom, you gotta buy something. This move is a U-turn from their 2018 open door policy, which was all about inclusivity. Now they're setting the stage for a new scene. No smoking, no vaping, and definitely no BYOB in the store. If you break the rules, you might just get the barista's polite "please leave," or if things get a little too wild, you might even get a visit from the local police. Well, that's it for today. Thank you so much for being with us. I'm Ken Rosato. We will see you next time on Next.